People say that Bitcoin is gaining popularity because of the pandemic. But if you ask experts like Robert Kiyosaki, they will tell you that the real reason is not the pandemic, but our messed up economy and the bad condition that our fiat money is in as we speak.
You guys know on September 17th, 2019, there was a crash in the repo market of the shadow banking system.
If you remember correctly, you will realize that on September 17, 2013, there was a crash in the repo market in the shadow banking system, right after COVID and the pandemic appeared in December of 2019, and everybody started blaming pandemic for their downfall in money. But that seems a little too suspicious. It honestly seems a little too convenient to ignore the crash and just blame the pandemic for everything alone. Something is definitely fishy there. And now, the pandemic seems to be subsiding, and the happy days are here again. But is it enough to realize that assets like gold, silver, and Bitcoin are investments of disaster? What does that mean? Well, it means that if everything was perfect, you would not need to put your money in gold, silver, and Bitcoin. You would be happy with your fiat money, which would be in perfect condition. But when disaster strikes, particularly economic downturns, that is when the importance of these assets comes into play. While Robert has been collecting silver since 1964, when he found out the silver tinge upon his dimes, nickels, and quarters, and has been buying gold since 1970 when he visited Hong Kong and bought a program at Princeton that told him what happened when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. This shows that he is a pessimist. And like most of the pessimists, he also realized that you can't just keep printing money, as it gets a little suspicious after a while. He explained this with an example of a female biologist who came on a ship after escaping from Omaha just to test manufacturer. The doctor says the same thing that Robert does, that there are some things that just don't mix. He has seen many people saying that something is fishy about the pandemic. Of course, the doctors and volunteers would say that because they probably have to make vaccines and make a lot of money from it. But doesn't that sound suspicious too? That is what a suspicious mind works like. Another thing Robert has been talking about for a long time has been the fact that the gap between the rich and the poor is growing. The TPP and all of the social programs giving people money would now rather stay to pay. People would now rather stay to pay.
And I started buying gold in 1972. My first coin was in 1972 was in Hong Kong. I bought a Kruger in. And the reason is I understood what happened when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. And so, as you know, most of the pessimist gold guys like me just know you just can't keep printing money.
But you will also read about this in his new book that says that 2020 was the year that stole his pension. It explains in great detail how the Wall Street, the shadow banking system, Treasury, and the Fed have been sucking cash out of cash, which has put old guys like Robert in trouble by emptying their pensions. So, will there be social unrest after this? The old guys might be too old to protest, but the kids might have the old parents move in with them. But Robert also believes that this is not about the pandemic, but also the messed up economy and the lack of financial education. There's no financial education at schools, he says. He wants to teach people how to be a capitalist about their money. Why? Because he saw his poor dad, a school administrator in Stanford, Northwestern, and a hardcore socialist, never get the benefit of his own money. He realizes that in a socialist framework, money is never enough to pay rent. That is why he wants to turn around education and school teachers, because he has a tremendous influence on young minds.
The gap between rich and poor, as you know, is growing. And then when that PPP and all of the social programs giving people money, people are now would rather stay at home and get paid. I mean, who would?
He would know when he himself owns 7,000 apartments and has seen medical associations tell his tenants not to pay his rent during pandemic. He calls this fascism. He is an investor. He has a lot of company from people that work for him who also think that he never works. And in a Marxist framework, he should not get any profits as a result. But he says that he does provide the capital that makes it all possible and allows all his employees and labor to come to work and earn their livelihood. He, like other shareholders, investors, owners, are the ones that provide the structure for it all. They take the risk of putting in money into the unforeseen future and anticipating that it works out. They do all that, and so they deserve the biggest part of the profit for making it all possible. But then again, you have a guy named Richard Walsh, who is currently the most popular Marxist we have on YouTube today. The guy says that capitalists add nothing to a business and that all the profit should go to the labor. So, if there's $1 million profit, then according to him, the labor should take the money, not the shareholders and not the capitalist. This is the very basic idea of Marxism versus capitalism. A pretty hardcore capitalism in that sense. Spend time and place the socialist government at the time. Those people really do need help.
Capitalists add nothing to a business, and it should all go to labor. So if there's $1 million profit, then the labor should take the money, not the shareholders and not the capitalists. So that's Marxism versus capitalism.
People should be helped, but not helped to sit at home and get a paycheck without moving a finger. No, that is not what Robert suggests. He, who is himself a former U.S. Marine, and he still thinks that nobody should be paid just sitting idle at home if they are not disabled or completely unable to do something to earn that money. So, getting back to the date of September 17, 2019, when the fire in the repo market started, it could have been saved and avoided if tried. And they did. The Fed jumped in and the Treasury jumped in to save the repo. But that is called socialism. That is the central control problem because now the economy is controlled by the Fed. And for obvious reasons, the free market is now gone. The economy is now a Fed-fueled party in simple terms. Wondering what happened after that separated the price of a stock from the fundamentals of a stock? The fact that many of the CEOs were now just borrowing money off their corporations, like Motzik, Ford, and many more, just go ahead and make it triple. They went from AAA to be a junk bond status. AT&T and all these companies now have more worth in gold than they have monetary reserves. This is not a bank stock. It all dates back to September 17, 2009, the day when the Fed and the Treasury entered the market, and it changed for the better or for the worse, who knows. It became a centrally controlled economy anyways. This is what you now call communism in the truest sense. The economy now does not need the type of commercial banks that do not want to go straight from the Treasury to the people, which is, like you know, basically an empty buy as far as they are concerned. In this case, the Fed is not interested in becoming the banker for the people in this centrally controlled economy. They just want everything to go by them whenever a bank does something for the people. The biggest problem, hence, is the economy, centrally controlled and not letting the markets run freely like they did before.
Well, that old saying is don't fight the Fed. And there is some truth to that. If you had followed that advice in '71, you did okay because the Fed always bailed you out.